Musk felt a chill run through him. This was no longer just about erratic weather patterns or climate change. It was about something far more deliberate. Someone or something was actively manipulating the environment, and the consequences could be disastrous. "We need to act fast," Musk said, his voice steady despite the tension building inside him. "Keep digging, Sarah, and let me know the second you find anything that could explain this." After hanging up, Musk turned to Gwynne Shotwell, who had been poring over documents and making calls to various government agencies. She looked up from her desk, her face grim. "Any luck?" Musk asked, though he already had a sinking feeling about what she was going to say. "We've got some eyes on it," Gwynne replied, "but the government is hesitant to get involved. They don't want to stir panic until we have concrete proof. It's like they don't want to acknowledge how big this could be. I'm pushing them, but they're waiting for more evidence." Musk's patience was running thin. Time was something they didn't have. Every day the fires raged, every day they didn't know who or what was behind them, the situation became more dangerous. The world was already on edge with the climate crisis. This new development could send it into chaos. "I don't care what the government thinks. This is happening now, and we need to stop it. I'm not going to wait for concrete proof. I'm going to get it myself," Musk said, his voice steely. Gwynne nodded. "I understand. Let's see what we can do." Just then, Andreas Zimmer called in. "Elon, I think you need to hear this," he said, urgency in his voice. "I've been diving into the satellite data, and I found something. There's a pattern, one that's eerily familiar." Musk sat up straight. "What are you talking about?" "It's a sequence, a calculated pattern in how these fires are spreading," Andreas explained. "And it's too close to be random. These fires aren't just a natural phenomenon. They're following a trajectory, almost as if someone is guiding them. There's some form of control here. It's subtle, but it's there." Musk felt his heart race. "What are you saying, Andreas? Are you telling me someone is intentionally setting these fires?" "I'm not sure yet, but the data suggests we're not dealing with an accident," Andreas replied. "There's something happening here that doesn't fit the usual wildfire model. It's like someone or something is using a type of environmental manipulation. The fires seem to follow an invisible path, like there's a map or a blueprint they're adhering to." It was supposed to be just another routine day for Elon Musk, a morning spent in the bustling offices of SpaceX, followed by a few meetings at Tesla, and perhaps a quiet evening reviewing data on Mars exploration. But today was different. The usual hum of activity was replaced with a sense of urgency, a tension Musk couldn't shake off. He sat at his desk, his fingers flying across the keyboard, reviewing satellite data for a new project. As he scanned the numbers, one set of data caught his attention. It was subtle at first, a blip in the data that seemed too insignificant to matter. But Musk's mind worked like a machine, always processing, always searching for patterns. Something about this blip didn't sit right with him. He zoomed in on the coordinates, his heart quickening as he realized it wasn't just any anomaly. It was a pattern that didn't match the normal spread of wildfires across the world. Musk leaned closer to the screen. The data wasn't showing a random distribution of fires. It was far more organized, almost as if someone or something was guiding their direction. He scanned over other regions that should have been unaffected by the wildfires. Yet, these small but unmistakable data points began to emerge, as though the fires were following a precise route. "What the hell?" Musk muttered under his breath. He was used to spotting anomalies in data, but this felt different. It was as if a force, an unknown force, was influencing these fires. He stared at the screen for a long moment, his mind racing. Could it be something technological? Or was it something more sinister? There were too many questions and not enough answers. His phone buzzed on the desk, dragging him out of his thoughts. It was a message from his assistant, Greg. "Elon, you have a meeting with the Tesla team in 10 minutes. Are you ready?" Musk let out a sigh, his gaze lingering on the screen before replying, "Tell them I'll be there in 20. He stared at the data again, trying to make sense of it. But it was clear, This was no ordinary wildfire season. Something was wrong, and Musk, always the visionary, couldn't shake the feeling that he had just stumbled onto something that no one else was seeing. But what if this discovery wasn't a fluke? What if the patterns he was observing weren't just coincidences? The implications. Wildfires engineered or influenced by unseen forces could change everything. Could technology, his own technology, somehow be contributing to this? Or was something else at play, something larger than he could imagine? Musk leaned back in his chair, staring at the screen as the weight of the discovery settled in. He knew one thing for sure: this wasn't just a wildfire season. It was a puzzle, one he had to solve. And if he was right, no one else had noticed it yet. The world had no idea what was coming. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Elon Musk was about to dive into something bigger than anything he'd ever tackled before. Elon Musk had seen a lot of things in his life: rocket launches that defied gravity, electric cars that raced toward a sustainable future, and even self-driving vehicles that had once seemed like science fiction. But today, as he sat in his private office at SpaceX, he felt a sense of unease wash over him. The hum of the day-to-day operations was there, of course. The buzz of engineers and technicians working tirelessly to push the limits of space exploration and technology. But for Musk, today was different. He sat in front of his computer, scanning over the data streams coming in from the SpaceX satellites that monitored Earth's weather and environmental patterns. The numbers were what they always were: steady, reliable, boring. That was, until his eyes caught something strange. A set of coordinates blinked in the corner of his screen. Musk's curiosity was piqued. At first glance, it seemed like just another wildfire somewhere in the world. The satellite data often picked up fires, but these fires didn't look right. They weren't following the usual chaotic paths. They weren't behaving as they should. The spread of the fires was almost too calculated. He clicked through the satellite images and zoomed in on the area where the fire data had pinged. As he studied the imagery, it became clear these wildfires weren't following typical patterns. Usually, fires spread based on the winds, terrain, and dryness of the environment. But these? They seemed oddly organized, almost deliberate. They seemed to move in a direction that didn't make sense. His heart rate quickened. He refreshed the data and zoomed in on another fire zone, this time in a different part of the world. The same anomaly appeared. A wildfire, sure, but it wasn't acting like any wildfire he had ever seen before. There was something subtle but noticeable, that suggested these fires weren't just happening on their own. Musk's eyes narrowed. He wasn't just some engineer who happened to dabble in environmental science. He was someone who made it his business to see patterns where others saw noise. He'd learned long ago to trust his gut, and right now, his gut was telling him something wasn't right. "Elon, are you still with us?" A voice crackled over his office intercom, snapping him out of his thoughts. It was Greg, his assistant. Musk blinked, momentarily disoriented. "Yeah, I'm here. Give me a second." He turned his attention back to the screen, his mind racing. What if these weren't ordinary wildfires? What if something or someone was controlling them, guiding them? It wasn't just the spread that seemed odd. It was the timing, the intensity. This wasn't the usual pattern of fires that could be explained away by weather and climate change. Something larger was at play, something Musk couldn't yet explain. He quickly scrolled through other data sets from the past few weeks, looking for more anomalies. There it was again, fires following unnatural paths, as if tracing a map that no one had drawn. His hands hovered over the keyboard. Could this be a sign of something more? An early warning system malfunction? A glitch in the satellite sensors? Or something far more ominous? Musk wasn't a man who usually got bogged down by doubts, but this was different. This didn't feel like a coincidence. The data was clear, but it didn't fit with anything he knew about wildfires. "Hey, Greg," Musk said, his voice tight. "Cancel the meeting with the Tesla team. I need to look at something. Got it, Elon, Greg replied, his tone slightly concerned. Everything okay? I don't know yet, Musk replied, but it will be. Without another word, he pulled up a new set of satellite images, focusing on one of the regions currently being ravaged by wildfires in California. Musk's mind worked in overdrive. What if these fires were being manipulated, either through technology or some other unknown force? Could someone be using these fires as a cover for something else? It was a crazy thought, but Musk had learned that sometimes the most outlandish ideas were the ones that turned out to be true. His phone buzzed again, this time with a message from his brother Kimball. You coming over later? We need to talk. Musk stared at the message for a moment but didn't respond. Right now, he had something far more pressing to focus on. Musk's fingers danced across the keyboard, pulling up even more data, more satellite images, more fire maps. It wasn't long before a pattern began to emerge. The fires weren't simply random. They were connected in ways Musk couldn't quite explain. It was almost as if there were a blueprint, a guiding hand behind. The chaos in Musk's mind began to race. Could it be that the wildfires were somehow linked to technology he and others were developing? He knew that SpaceX, with its advanced satellite systems, could track the Earth in unprecedented detail. What if this technology was being used in ways no one had anticipated? He scrolled through the data again. This time, he pulled up the footage of SpaceX's Starlink satellites in orbit, looking for any anomalies. Could the satellites themselves be somehow involved? The thought seemed absurd, but Musk was not one to dismiss ideas simply because they didn't make sense at first glance. Musk leaned back in his chair and rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of his discovery settle in. The implications of this were enormous, far beyond the scope of anything he had worked on before. The fires were becoming a global crisis, and if his suspicions were correct, they could be more than just a natural disaster, they could be a man-made one. What if no one else had noticed? What if the world was blind to the cause behind the fires, and he was the only one who could see it? Musk's heart raced. He was about to step into uncharted territory. He had to act, and he had to act fast. But before he could dive deeper into his investigation, his phone buzzed again, this time with a call from Gwynne Shotwell, the president of SpaceX. Elon, you good? We've got an emergency board meeting in an hour. We need you here, she said. He paused. It'll be there in 20, Musk said. His voice was steady, but in the back of his mind, he couldn't shake the feeling that what he was about to uncover would change everything. Tell them I'll be there soon, he added before ending the call. He stood up from his desk, pacing the room. The world didn't know it yet, but something far more significant than just wildfires was unfolding. And Elon Musk, the man who had dared to dream of a better future, might be the only one who could stop it. Elon Musk had always been driven by a sense of urgency, a need to challenge the status quo. It wasn't just ambition that propelled him forward. It was a deep-seated belief that he could change the world. The man who had founded PayPal, launched SpaceX, and revolutionized the electric car market was no stranger to taking risks. But the fire that burned inside him wasn't just about innovation. It was about solving problems. It was about survival. Now, as he sat in his office at SpaceX, looking over the mysterious wildfire data that had consumed his thoughts, he knew this was no ordinary challenge. It was a problem that needed solving, and Elon Musk wasn't one to let things go unsolved, not when the future of the planet was at stake. The story of how Musk became the person he was today was a familiar one to those who followed his career. Born in Pretoria, South Africa, in 1971, he had always been a curious child. His interest in technology and innovation had begun early, sparking a lifelong obsession with understanding how things worked. He devoured books, exploring everything from science fiction to complex technical manuals. By the age of 12, he had taught himself computer programming and created a video game he sold for $500, his first taste of entrepreneurship. But his childhood wasn't all about intellectual pursuits. Musk's early years were marked by difficulty and isolation. His parents divorced when he was young, and he was often picked on by other kids for being different. It was this early adversity that helped shape Musk's relentless determination. He learned early that if he wanted to make a difference, he had to do it on his own terms. At 17, Musk moved to Canada to attend Queen's University, eventually transferring to the University of Pennsylvania in the United States. By the time he graduated, he had a clear vision of what he wanted to do. He believed that technology could not only change the world but save it, and so he set out on his mission to do just that. But no one, not even Musk himself, could have predicted the immense hurdles he would face in his career. It wasn't enough to just invent new things, he had to convince the world to embrace them. SpaceX's early years were a constant uphill battle. Rockets failed, investors pulled out, and critics were quick to point out that a private company could never hope to compete with NASA's decades of experience. Tesla's story was no different. The electric car industry was riddled with skepticism, and Musk found himself fighting not only for his vision but for his company's very survival. Yet through it all, Musk had thrived. SpaceX had become the first privately funded company to send a spacecraft to the International Space Station, while Tesla had revolutionized the car industry with electric vehicles that combined performance with sustainability. These achievements were milestones, but Musk wasn't content to stop there. He had bigger dreams, dreams that now included making life multiplanetary and transitioning the world to renewable energy. It was these grand visions that had kept Musk moving forward, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. But his drive wasn't just about building rockets or electric cars. Musk had always been deeply concerned about the future of humanity. His worries were not just about technology but about the planet itself. He had always been outspoken about climate change and its potential to destroy the world as we knew it. He had launched solar companies, advocated for carbon taxes, and spearheaded efforts to reduce humanity's dependence on fossil fuels. The question of the environment wasn't just. To Musk, the issue wasn't abstract, it was personal. As a father of several children, he often found himself thinking about the world they would inherit. Would they have a planet to live on, or would they face a future of devastation brought on by environmental collapse? It was these concerns that had driven Musk's decision to dig into the data surrounding the wildfires that had recently caught his attention. While others were simply watching the fires burn from afar, Musk's mind was already searching for answers. He had seen enough of the world's problems to know that the situation was urgent, and he wasn't about to let a pattern in the data go unexplored, no matter how strange it seemed. Musk's closest allies knew this about him. They had seen firsthand the kind of drive that pushed him to pursue even the most far-fetched ideas. Take Gwynne Shotwell, for example. She was one of SpaceX's earliest hires and had been a key figure in the company's success. Their professional relationship was built on trust, but there was more to their bond than just business. Shotwell understood Musk's obsession with solving problems, no matter the cost. She had seen him navigate failure and success, and she knew that when Musk set his sights on something, there was no turning back. But not everyone in Musk's life shared his sense of urgency. Kimball Musk, Elon's younger brother, was one of the few people who could offer a different perspective. Kimball had always been more grounded, with a passion for food sustainability and the health of local communities. While Elon's focus was often on the big global picture, Kimball had a different approach, one that was more focused on tangible, everyday solutions. Their differing visions had sometimes caused friction between them, but it was clear that they had a deep bond. Kimball had been by Elon's side through the darkest times in his career, offering support when others doubted him. In turn, Elon respected his brother's grounded approach and often sought his advice during moments of personal crisis. Today, though, things were different. Elon had to address the wildfires first. Whatever his brother wanted to talk about would have to wait. This was bigger than anything they had ever faced before. As Musk sat back in his chair, staring at the satellite imagery of the wildfires once more, his thoughts swirled. Could it be possible that these fires weren't the result of climate change alone? Were they being manipulated? And if so, who or what was behind it? His mind raced with possibilities, but he knew one thing for sure: he couldn't do this alone. He needed a team, people who shared his vision, People who weren't afraid to go after the hard truths, no matter how uncomfortable they might be. But more than that, he needed to act. The fires weren't waiting, and neither was the planet. "Gwyn," Musk said, his voice steady but urgent as he reached for his phone. "I need you on this. We've got a bigger problem than we realize." Elon Musk wasn't a man who waited for things to happen. He made them happen. And when he saw the anomalies in the wildfire data, his mind immediately jumped to one conclusion: this was no accident. Someone or something was behind it. The question now was who or what was pulling the strings. After his call with Gwyn Shotwell, he immediately began assembling a team of experts, people who could dig deeper into the data and uncover the truth. As much as he trusted his instincts, Musk knew that this was bigger than one person. It was going to take a collective effort to understand what was happening, and perhaps even stop it. The first person he called was Dr. Sarah Grant, a renowned climatologist who had been a key part of his solar energy initiatives at Tesla. She had an intimate understanding of how the environment worked, and, just as importantly, how technology could impact it. Musk had worked with her on several projects before and trusted her judgment. She was pragmatic but open-minded, someone who wouldn't rule out even the most outlandish of theories until they were thoroughly investigated. "Sarah, it's Elon. I need you to look at some data I just received. There's something wrong with the wildfires happening around the world. They're following patterns they shouldn't be," Musk said, his tone urgent. Her response was immediate. "I'm on it. I'll need some time to analyze the data, but I'll let you know if I find anything." Musk hung up, his thoughts still racing. The next person on his list was Andreas Zimmer, a cybersecurity expert who had worked with Musk on multiple occasions to ensure SpaceX's operations stayed safe from digital threats. While Zimmer wasn't an environmental scientist, his expertise in data encryption and satellite surveillance made him an invaluable asset in cases like this. "Elon, what's going on?" Andreas asked, picking up the phone on the first ring. "I need you to pull every piece of satellite data from SpaceX and Starlink you can get your hands on. We're dealing with something strange with these wildfires. The data's been tampered with, and I need your help to dig deeper," Musk explained. "I'll start pulling the files now," Andreas responded, his tone serious. "This sounds big. Let me know what you find, and we'll go from there." Musk hung up and leaned back in his chair, his mind spinning with possibilities. He wasn't sure where this investigation would lead, but he knew one thing: he had to follow the data, no matter how unsettling it might be. Back in his chair, trying to calm his racing mind, Musk felt the overwhelming sense of urgency. Yet he knew better than to dive in without a clear plan. He had to gather information first, get the team up to speed, and then figure out the next step. He wasn't used to feeling this uncertain, but this was something new, something beyond his usual scope of work. While the team started gathering data, Musk took a moment to think about the bigger picture. He had always been a man of vision, but this situation was different. Wildfires were a devastating force of nature, but the idea that they could be manipulated, controlled by an unknown entity, was almost too much to fathom. Yet the evidence was staring him in the face. The data didn't lie. There was something else going on here. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Gwyn Shotwell, her expression serious but determined. "Hey, Elon. I've been briefed. What's going on with the wildfires?" she asked, settling into the chair across from him. Musk quickly filled her in on the data anomalies, the strange patterns in the wildfires, and his growing suspicion that someone or something was influencing them. He didn't have all the answers, but he knew that Gwyn was the right person to help him think through this. "I'm not sure what we're dealing with yet, but the fires aren't behaving like they should," Musk said, pacing the room. "The question is why? Who would want to cause this? Or is it something more?" Gwyn nodded thoughtfully. "If this is what you think it is, then we need to act fast. Wildfires are destructive on their own, but if someone's intentionally causing them, it could mean something even worse is on the horizon." Musk felt a flicker of something cold inside him, a realization that if his suspicions were correct, the world might be facing a disaster far bigger than the wildfires themselves. This wasn't just an environmental issue, this was a question of security, of control. Whoever had the ability to control the fires could very well have control over much more. I've got a team pulling data right now, Musk continued, and I need you to reach out to some of our government contacts. We may need to work with them or at least get their eyes on this. Gwyn raised an eyebrow. You want to bring the government into this already? Musk met her gaze, his expression unwavering. If this is a coordinated attack, if we're dealing with something on a global scale, we need all the help we can get. We can't take any chances. Gwyn paused, then nodded. I'll make the calls. But we need to be careful. If this is a conspiracy or if someone's behind these fires, the last thing we want is to make ourselves a target. Elon's mind buzzed with possibilities. That's exactly why I need you on this, Gwyn. You know how to navigate tricky situations. We're going to need that expertise now more than ever. Before Gwyn could respond, Musk's phone rang. It was Dr. Sarah Grant, the climatologist. Elon, I've looked through the data. You're right. There's something strange going on with the wildfires. It's not just the patterns. The intensity of the fires seems to be accelerating far beyond what we'd expect for this time of year. And there's something else. Some of the regions where these fires are occurring are more remote. We're seeing higher temperatures in areas that should be cooler. It's almost like the environment is being manipulated, but I can't figure out how, Sarah explained, her voice tight with concern. Musk's grip on the phone tightened. What are you suggesting? I don't know yet. But whatever is causing this, it's not just natural forces at play. Someone or something is influencing the climate, and we need to find out who or what is behind it, Sarah said. Musk felt a surge of adrenaline. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fit together, but the picture was still unclear. All he knew was that the wildfires were part of a much larger mystery, one that had the potential to change everything. We're on it, Sarah, Musk said, his voice steady. I'll keep you posted as we get more data. As he hung up, the weight of the situation settled back in. Whatever was happening, the world had no idea what was coming. But he did, and he wasn't about to sit back and wait for it to unfold. The days that followed were filled with an urgency Musk wasn't used to. It wasn't often that he found himself working alongside a team of experts from different fields, each bringing their own skills to the table, piecing together a puzzle that, at its core, seemed utterly unexplainable. But this wasn't any ordinary challenge. The wildfires, the anomalies, the data, it was all pointing to something bigger, something that could threaten the world in ways Musk had never imagined. SpaceX's satellite data kept pouring in, and each new batch revealed more strange patterns. Andreas Zimmer, the cybersecurity expert, had been instrumental in analyzing the data, uncovering even more anomalies that hinted at tampering or manipulation. Musk knew they were on the brink of uncovering something groundbreaking, but the full truth still eluded them. Musk had begun sifting through layers of data to determine if anyone had tampered with the satellite systems. Though everything appeared secure on the surface, the signals weren't being hacked, and no one was interfering with the data streams, at least not directly. The anomalies remained. There was something else at play, something Musk couldn't explain. Meanwhile, Sarah Grant, the climatologist, was deep into her research. Her voice crackled over the phone one evening, the fatigue evident in her tone. Elon, I think I found something. It's subtle, but it's there. The fires are connected to temperature spikes, but not just in areas you'd expect. Some of the fires are cropping up in places that are typically damp or temperate. And the biggest clue is the soil composition. It's almost as if the natural conditions have been altered. Musk's mind spun. What kind of environmental manipulation are you talking about? Weather control? A weapon of some sort? Sarah hesitated. It's too early to tell, but there's a possibility that whoever's behind this has access to technology or resources we haven't even considered. Musk felt the gravity of the situation settle heavily on his shoulders. This wasn't just a question of natural disaster anymore. This was a targeted attack on the environment, one that could have global consequences. We need to track down the source of this, Musk said firmly. I want all the data, every satellite feed, every weather report, every scrap of information. We need to find the pattern. He turned to Gwyn. Reach out to our contacts at the Department of Homeland Security. Let them know this isn't just about fires. This could be part of a larger scheme. If we're right, we may be dealing with something far more dangerous than anyone realizes. Gwyn nodded. I'll make the call. But as Musk sat back down, a new thought began to gnaw at him. If these fires were being manipulated, the question was why? What was the end goal? And who stood to gain from wreaking havoc on the environment? His thoughts were interrupted by a sudden notification on his phone. It was an encrypted message from an unknown source. Elon, the message began. If you want the truth, you need to look deeper. The wildfires are the least of your problems. Musk's heart skipped a beat. The cryptic message was chilling in its simplicity, and yet it confirmed everything he feared. Someone knew about the fires, and they wanted to make sure he understood the magnitude of the situation. The message ended with a warning. You're closer to the truth than you think, but be careful who you trust. Not everyone is who they seem. Musk's blood ran cold. This was no longer just a global environmental crisis. This was a game of secrets, manipulation, and shadowy forces that might be far more powerful than anything Musk had ever encountered. He turned to Gwyn, his face pale. Someone's watching us. This just got a lot more complicated. Gwyn stood up, her expression resolute. We've come this far, Elon. We're not backing down now. As the room filled with tension, Musk knew one thing for sure. The investigation into the wildfires was about to take a dark turn. Whatever the truth was, it would change the world forever. Elon Musk knew the stakes were rising with each passing day. But the encrypted message from the unknown source had shifted the ground beneath his feet. Whoever was behind this, whoever was manipulating the wildfires, was someone who knew just how to keep him on edge. It was no longer just about the fires themselves. The message had opened up a whole new layer to the mystery. Someone was actively trying to keep him in the dark, and Musk wasn't the type to back down from a challenge. The moment he received the message, his thoughts began swirling. Who could possibly be trying to sabotage the investigation? Who had the power to control natural forces like wildfires? And why send him a warning instead of just continuing their operation in the shadows? Musk had spent the entire night poring over the data, speaking with Sarah Grant about the wildfires, trying to connect the dots. But the mystery had only deepened. What was initially a concern about strange patterns and climate data had quickly grown into something much darker. He was still in his office when Gwyn Shotwell arrived, her expression unusually tight. Elon, I've been digging, she began, setting a folder of documents on the table. I reached out to Homeland Security like you asked, and they had some disturbing things to say. They're aware of some kind of coordinated environmental manipulation, but they don't know who's behind it. They mentioned a new player, someone who's been operating under the radar for years. Musk's heart skipped a beat. A new player? Who? Someone who has the resources to manipulate large-scale environmental events. Someone with more money than most governments. Gwyn continued, her voice low. But there's something strange. They're not a government entity. They've got their hands in everything: energy, climate research, even weather modification technology. Could it be the same people behind these fires? Musk asked, his voice sharp. I don't know yet, she said, shaking her head. But there's a connection. I've had some off the record. Talks with a few of our contacts are revealing that this group has been experimenting with environmental control for years under the guise of climate engineering. There are whispers about them in the right circles, but no one can confirm anything publicly. It's all too classified. Musk felt a growing sense of unease. So, we're looking at a shadow organization with the ability to manipulate wildfires, maybe even the weather? Gwyn nodded, her eyes narrowed. That's what it looks like. This was exactly what Musk had feared. The fires were just a symptom of something much larger. If someone had the ability to control the environment, it could mean catastrophic consequences for the planet. And if they were playing this game, there was no telling what they might be planning next. Elon, there's more, Gwyn said, handing him a printed report. I found a link between some of the organizations tied to climate engineering and a series of corporate entities that deal with highly classified weather modification patents. They'd been conducting experiments on a global scale. Musk scanned the documents quickly, his eyes catching key names that seemed to lead back to people with ties to some of the most powerful industries in the world: oil, energy, and tech. But what was most alarming was the mention of a facility in the Swiss Alps. It was small, isolated, and had recently come under scrutiny by environmental watchdogs for its potential to influence global weather patterns. "This looks like a well-funded operation," Musk muttered, his mind racing. If they're behind the wildfires, they could be using the fires to test their technology, or worse, as a form of leverage. Gwyn agreed. Exactly. And if they're using the wildfires as a cover, they might have other plans in the works too. This isn't just about fires. This could be part of a bigger scheme to control resources, manipulate ecosystems, or even drive climate policy. Musk felt the weight of it all pressing down on him. This was no longer about saving the planet from a disaster. It was about preventing an unseen, orchestrated collapse that could be playing out under everyone's noses. The implications were terrifying. "We need to get more information, and we need to get it fast," Musk said, standing up and pacing. "If they're manipulating the fires, there's a chance they've been doing this for a long time. And if they control the environment, they control everything: food, water, energy, even governments. We need to find out how deep this goes." Gwyn's expression was grim. "Agreed. But we need to be careful. Whoever's behind this has the resources to cover their tracks. We might be walking into a trap." Musk paused, turning to face her. "Then we need to be prepared. I'm not backing down, Gwyn. We're going to expose this." Just then, his phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was Sarah Grant. "Elon, you're going to want to hear this," she said, her voice urgent. "I've done a deeper dive into the climate data, and it's worse than I thought. The fires, there's a pattern, yes, but what's more concerning is the fact that some of them are occurring in locations that are almost impossible for them to spread naturally. It's like they're being directed." "What do you mean?" Musk asked, feeling his pulse quicken. "Some of the fires are moving against the wind, or they're burning in places that are usually too wet to support such intense flames," Sarah explained. "I found evidence of an external force being applied, something that's superheating the atmosphere in those regions. It's almost like someone's creating a perfect storm to ignite the fires." Musk's mind reeled. "That's exactly what I've been thinking. It's not just about climate change anymore. Someone is using weather manipulation technology to make these fires happen, and they're doing it in a way that makes them look like a natural disaster. We're dealing with something big, Elon," Sarah continued. "I think we need to move on this before it escalates further. Whoever's behind this has the power to change the course of nature. We can't wait for someone else to stop them." "Agreed," Musk replied, his voice steely. "We're going to get ahead of this. Let's bring the team together. I want everything we have on this: satellite data, weather patterns, climate models. Let's find out who's behind it and stop them before it's too late." As he ended the call, he turned back to Gwyn. "We have to move fast. We're up against a force that could reshape the planet, and we don't even know their endgame yet." "We'll make sure we're ready," Gwyn said, her voice filled with resolve. "But we need to stay one step ahead. Whoever's doing this won't stop until they've achieved their goal. We have to figure out what that is." The room was thick with tension. Musk knew that the path ahead would be treacherous. Whoever was behind the environmental manipulation wasn't just playing a game. They were playing for keeps. And Musk wasn't about to let them win. Elon Musk wasn't the type to be easily intimidated. After all, the tech mogul had built empires and industries that seemed impossible to conquer: space exploration, electric vehicles, and clean energy. But as the investigation into the wildfires deepened, he felt a gnawing sense of unease that he couldn't shake. The encrypted message, the cryptic warning, and now the discovery that someone or something was deliberately manipulating the environment. It felt as though the very fabric of nature was being twisted by forces beyond anyone's control. As he sat in his office at SpaceX headquarters, the room illuminated only by the soft glow of his computer screen, Musk's mind was racing with the pieces of the puzzle. Everything seemed connected: the satellite data, the unusual fire patterns, the climate engineering projects tied to shadowy corporations, and now the link to an isolated facility in the Swiss Alps. "We need to get to the bottom of this," Musk muttered to himself, staring at the screen. He wasn't alone in this. His team, Sarah Grant, Gwynne Shotwell, Andreas Zimmer, and others, had been working tirelessly, but the breakthrough still seemed just out of reach. The fires, once perceived as a series of unfortunate events, were quickly revealing themselves as part of something far more organized, far more dangerous. The fires were not random. They were meticulously planned and timed, appearing in the exact locations where they could do the most damage to both human life and the environment. As Musk was about to make another call, his phone buzzed. It was Sarah Grant. "Elon, I found something," she said, her voice strained. "I think it's a breakthrough, but I'm going to need your approval to take the next step." Musk's pulse quickened. "What have you found, Sarah?" "There's a link between the locations of the wildfires and an obscure project that was funded several years ago," Sarah began. The project was called Phoenix Horizon, and it was an initiative to test large-scale weather manipulation using atmospheric energy fields. It was a secret military project, but it has all the hallmarks of something that could be used to influence climate patterns. I found classified documents that suggest Phoenix Horizon might still be active, and the company behind it has ties to the facility in the Swiss Alps. "Phoenix Horizon," Musk murmured, his mind racing. "That sounds like something out of a sci-fi novel. So, you're saying this technology could have caused the fires?" "I don't know yet, but I'm getting closer," Sarah replied. "I need access to their recent research. The problem is, this organization is so well hidden that even the government doesn't have a clear picture of it. They've been operating in the shadows for years, pulling strings without anyone knowing." Musk leaned back in his chair, processing the information. "We need to get to that facility. Phoenix Horizon could be the key to everything." "I agree," Sarah said, her tone resolute. "But we'll need to be careful. This isn't just about investigating a facility. Whoever is behind this is playing a dangerous game. If they think we're onto them, they'll make sure we don't get any closer." "Understood," Musk said, his voice hardening. "We'll take every precaution. I'll have Gwynne make the arrangements. We need to move quickly before they realize we're coming." Hours later, Gwynne Shotwell and Andreas Zimmer had set up a secure meeting with their contacts in the intelligence community. The plan was simple: gain access to the facility in the Swiss Alps, gather as much intel as they could, and leave without drawing attention to themselves. But Musk couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into something far more dangerous than they anticipated. The next day, they were aboard a private jet heading toward Europe. Musk stared out the window, his mind a whirlwind of questions. Who were the people behind Phoenix Horizon? What did they want with such power over the environment? And most importantly, why had they left such a trail of evidence for him to find? The flight felt long, the silence heavy with anticipation. When they landed in Geneva, Gwynne took the lead, arranging for their team to travel incognito. They would drive to the Swiss Alps in unmarked vehicles to avoid unnecessary attention. As they made their way up the winding roads of the Alps, Musk couldn't help but feel they were getting closer to the heart of something much larger than he had ever imagined. The facility itself was tucked away in a remote valley, hidden from prying eyes by steep mountains on all sides. They arrived late in the evening, and Musk's heart raced as they approached the entrance, a nondescript, heavily guarded building that looked more like a research facility than anything out of the ordinary. But Musk had learned over the years that nothing was ever truly ordinary when it came to powerful interests. The people who controlled this kind of technology weren't interested in making headlines. They preferred to stay hidden in plain sight. Gwynne and Andreas had done their homework, and with some creative maneuvering, they were able to gain access to the facility. But as they walked through the cold, sterile hallways, the eerie silence in the air only deepened Musk's sense of foreboding. "This place is too quiet," Andreas whispered. "It feels like we're being watched." "Stay sharp," Musk replied. "We're here to get information, not make a scene." The team moved cautiously, their footsteps echoing in the empty halls. They passed several laboratories, each one filled with high-tech equipment, all humming with activity. Yet there were no scientists in sight, no one working. The place felt abandoned, even though it was clearly operational. Then they reached a large control room at the heart of the facility. The walls were lined with screens displaying weather data from around the world. Musk's eyes locked onto one of the monitors, a live feed of the wildfires they had been investigating. "These fires," Musk murmured. "They've been tracking them." "But why?" Just as he was about to approach the control panel, a sudden noise echoed from down the hallway, footsteps growing louder. The team froze. "Hide," Gwyn whispered urgently. They ducked behind a row of equipment, holding their breath. Musk could hear the footsteps coming closer, accompanied by voices speaking in a language he didn't recognize. The tension in the air was palpable. Whoever was here, they weren't friendly.